In the language of the school teacher, quiet class. All right, find your seats. Don't make me separate any of you. Okay, so obviously I am not Dan Casco. Dan Casco is not feeling well today, so I am going to be filling in for him. You got a text 6:30 this morning, and that let me know, okay, time to figure out what to do really quick. So we'll get through it. I decided to go ahead and pick another text like I did last time we went through Isaiah chapter 53. And this time we're going to pick another text in the New Testament. If you would open up your Bibles to the book of Romans. The book of Romans. I do this because I've got my second book coming out very soon here. This is just a preview copy of it. And the book that I've written, it's with my editor now, she's almost done with it, is God Gave Them Up. And it's on the text that we are going to be discussing this morning, Romans chapter 1, verses 18 through 32. This is a text that is very controversial, not only in secular society around us, but of course also in the church. There are people that outright deny what some of the accusations are in Romans chapter 1 because, quite frankly, it's uncomfortable. There are plenty of texts in the New Testament, in the Bible in general, that are uncomfortable for us as human beings. We don't like to deal with them. Whenever we don't like something, what do? We avoid it and we suppress it. And interestingly enough, that's really how this text begins. It begins with the suppression of the truth. And so we want to work our way through verses 18 through 32 today. I really hope that we can get through all of them. This is really just a summary of what's going to be found in this book whenever it comes out in one way, shape, or form. And we find ourselves in the beginning of verse 18, for when Paul says, "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth." Now, when we start this text, no text just exists by itself. It always exists in a context. That's right. And the reason why Paul is bringing up what he is about to bring up here is because it's a very simple reality. We're all accustomed to hearing the gospel, the good news of salvation. Well, there's really, truly no good news without the full weight and the full impact of the bad news. The bad news of damnation, the bad news of the wrath of God, the bad news of the justice of God. And that's really what Paul is building upon here in Romans chapter 1 and as well as in chapter 2. Right now, primarily, he's focused on making sure that everybody knows that everybody is under condemnation. So he starts with the Gentiles. And he starts with the Gentiles in this way: "For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness," not just some ungodliness, all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. And that first word, wrath, there, it comes from the word orge. It's where we get the word orgy from. It has a lot of passion denoted to it. That word wrath there is not welcome in many Christian circles, Christian churches all throughout the United States, because it's just not a pleasant word, you see. We're very much used to hearing God being portrayed as love. Love, 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 love. Okay? And that's it. That's all you get from it. But when you boil it down, you break it down, what you have to realize is that there is no love of God outside of the wrath of God. Now, did that make circuits go off in your head? That doesn't make any sense at all. Why in the world would you say something like that? Because the wrath of God displays the love of God, and the love of God is displayed in His love for His law, His commands, His love for His people, and His love for justice. If God truly loves justice like we do, or we love justice like God does, then He has to have wrath. And that's something that we should be able to join around and have no problem with as human beings. Because, here's the thing, you don't like it when injustice is done either. No human being does. Whenever we watch the news, there's something bad that happens, and the person that does the bad thing gets a slap on the wrist, or they don't get what's coming to them. What happens inside of you? That's unjust. That's not fair. Why do you do that? You're made in the image of God. That's why you do that. You have a heart that calls out for justice, okay? That comes from God. God's the same way. God loves justice. When wrongdoing is done, you want the person who did the wrongdoing to get what's coming to them. You want consequences. When somebody murders somebody, when somebody rapes somebody, when somebody kidnaps somebody, there's something inside of you that boils. That's the call for justice. God's the same way. And the only way for God to display His love for goodness, righteousness, and justice is by displaying His wrath. It's the way that He shows that He is the just judge of all the universe. It's the way that He can show that He has no partiality at all. God doesn't have favoritism, as Paul will go on to say later on in the book of Romans. He doesn't have favoritism. He treats everybody equally. And that's a terrifying thought. Because if He treats everybody equally, what's that mean about you and me? Romans chapter 3, verse 23. All have sinned and fall short of the glory of God, right? God has wrath. He has wrath against sin. He has wrath against injustice, unrighteousness, according to His law. And you rejoice in that. That's the weird thing about this. You like that because you don't want a God who's unjust. Nobody does. Okay? Well, actually, half the world does. The secular society around us certainly does. We want to be able to do some things while other things still get punished. God's just all the way around. And if He's just all the way around, that means people have wrath coming to them. So the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. Now that word suppress there, where is it here? Sorry, I'm doing this at the last second. You're looking at me like, what, didn't you write the book? You should know what that word is, right? The Greek word behind suppress here is katakeo, okay? And it means to prevent the doing of something or cause to be ineffective, to prevent, to hinder, to restrain. So it's something that is pressed down. It's something that is held down, and it's an active word. That means all the while this, whatever it is, we're going to get into it, is being suppressed and it's being pushed down, it's pushing back up at the same time. So you have to exert a certain amount of force in order to keep it down. So I like to use the illustration of, when I was a kid, certainly all of us, when we were kids, we'd go to the pool, we'd go to the lake, whatever it was, and we have a ball. We have a ball or a beach ball or something, and what do we like to do? We like to push it down. We like to submerge it in water and see how long, we can hold it there, okay? That's really the imagery that comes to my mind when I look at this word for suppress. You're holding it down. The only problem is, what are you holding down? What is being suppressed? They suppress the truth. Now, what about the truth is being suppressed? Verse 19. For what can be known about God is plain to them, because God has shown it to them. For His invisible attributes, namely His eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. In the things that have been made, so they are without excuse. The Psalms say clearly, the heavens display what? The glory of God. It is an unavoidable fact that when you look at the universe that is around us and all of its beauty and all of its grandeur, there is no way that you can look at that, see the order and how everything flows together. I use this example with the teens when I'm talking to them about it. We breathe out CO2, carbon dioxide, and we breathe in what? Oxygen. Where are you going to get more oxygen if we continue to use up all the oxygen? Well, funny thing, the plants breathe out what? Oxygen. And they breathe in carbon dioxide. Interesting little loop there. And that's just one of them. That's one of the many things that work so well all together to make life on earth possible. And when you look at that, you know that there was an intelligence behind what was made, what is here around us. We all know this reality. Every single one of us has in our conscience something that affirms the eternal power of God and the existence of God. And it's because of this very reality that whenever somebody comes to you and says that they're an atheist, here's what you can conclude, okay? They're not really an atheist. There are no true atheists. Everybody knows that God exists. And that's why, at the end of verse 20, Paul says, so they are without excuse. Why are they without excuse? Because they know the truth of God. They know that He exists, but they are what? Pressing it down. They're holding it under the water, trying to get it out of their thoughts, trying to get it out of their mind, their hearts. They don't want to deal with it. Why don't they want to deal with it? Class. Why don't they? Why would somebody suppress the truth of the existence of God?
They don't like God. They don't like the idea of God.
Why? Very good. You're right.
They don't like rules.
They don't like rules. Ted?
George Bernard Shaw is quoted. He was an atheist. He was a playwright, pretty famous guy, but he was an atheist. He was given a Bible as a gag gift once
Oh, yeah.
for a birthday present.
Uh-huh.
And he wrote inside that Bible, I have not read this book, I will not read this book, because if I do, it may change what I think, and I may have to change my life, and I'm not willing to do that. Now, that's a paraphrase, but that's
Sure.
what he said.
Yeah. That's what it comes down to. We like to live our lives the way that we want to. We don't like authority, okay? We don't like people telling us what to do, especially not some God above the clouds. We don't like that. We want to be able to make our own rules and declare, as it was in the beginning, remember what the serpent says, you shall be as God, knowing both good and evil. Yeah, that's still around today. We like to determine good and evil. Bill first, then Russ.
So one time in school, I had kids that late papers were accepted, and so I get late papers the last week of the 9 weeks, and I ended up spending 3 or 4 hours grading papers that I'd already graded.
Yeah.
So I made a rule that said, there's no late papers, you turn them in the day they do, or I'm not accepting them. And at the end, I asked the kids to kind of do a survey, and one of the kids said, I liked it when he made the rules, when he did that, because then I didn't have a choice.
Uh-huh.
So children, they're not happy without discipline. We think that we're happy without discipline, but they are much more content and at ease with themselves when they have rules and guidelines and they know what they're supposed to do. Because how many times when we go to a job we say, what are the job responsibilities?
Yeah.
What is it that I have to do? What are the parameters? What are the things that I need to get done? The criteria. And
Yeah.
we are comforted in that.
Mm-hmm.
So really, God's laws makes it easier, more comfortable for us because we know where we stand and what we're supposed to be doing.
Absolutely.
But the world doesn't want that. They think, just like my kids think they're happier without it, but in reality, they're much more happier when they get disciplined, when they step out of line and
Yes.
do what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, studies have shown that. There's more success coming from disciplined children than undisciplined children. You're right. Terry? Oh, wait, no, it's Russ. Yeah.
Well, the Bible describes atheists quite well. It says, fool says in his heart there is no God.
Yes.
So that's what God thinks of people that don't believe in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Why is it foolish? Why is it foolish to suggest that there is no God? Because everything around us testifies. It's on a silver platter. I exist. I made this. Your logic and your reason that I gave to you dictates that I exist. And so when you ignore the plain evidence that's in front of your face, it's foolish. It's moronic, to put it in Paul's terms, because that's the word that he uses here in this text, is moron. A moral moron, not insulting moron. Terry, last one, and then we're going to continue to go through here.
I'm going to give another example like Bill's.
Sure.
This isn't made up. This really happened.
I believe you. Every time you say that, I believe you.
School that has a playground behind the school with the fence that goes around the playground and streets outside the fence.
Yeah.
Normal kind of situation.
other people, and they should have no fence out there, and they will be happier if they don't have a fence between them and the outside. So they took the fence down in this elementary school.
Oh, boy.
And they found the children wouldn't go out and play on the edges because it was too close to sidewalks and cars and things like that. They all clumped in the middle and would play only in the middle. And so they thought, well, that didn't work very well. So they put the fence back up. And then, like before they took the fence down, there were children playing all over the field, including a foot or two from the fence, because they felt safe inside the fence.
They knew the boundaries.
They knew a boundary, and they wanted the boundary.
Yes. Yep. Subconsciously, we all do. We all like it does give us comfort knowing this is too far, this is not far, you're fine to do, that all gives us comfort. Absolutely. Okay, so let's move on. Verse 21. For although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or gave thanks to him. But they became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. So, when it says, for although they knew God, right there, this is confirmation. Everybody knows God. Who's the they there? Although this is human beings. Of course, he's being specific to the Gentiles, as he will be specific to the Jews later in chapter 2. But this is everybody. Everybody knows that God exists. Although they knew God, they did not honor him as God or give thanks to him. How important, we here coming up in a month, we're going to celebrate that wonderful holiday, Thanksgiving, okay? And I'm not going to eat as much this year, I promise. But don't laugh, don't stop it. The spirit of Dave Wilson is with us, apparently. Anyways, so that is a day where we like to take time, enjoy a meal, and meditate on what we are thankful for. It never made sense to me when atheists would have Thanksgiving. Who are you thankful for? Who are you thankful to? Really, it is a theistic celebration because you can only be thankful to a person. We celebrate Thanksgiving because, we want to display to God that we are thankful to him. And then, of course, the very next day, all that gets ruined. When all the greed and all the selfishness of humanity comes out. It's very good to be thankful to God for everything. He is the one that gives us life. He is the one that gives us breath. He is the one that gives us everything. When's the last time that you actually thank God for the air that you breathe? When's the last time that you thank God for the life that you have, for everything in your life? God is glorified when we give thanks to him. And when we don't give thanks to him, we're turning it back around on ourselves, not making him the focus, making ourselves the focus, and thereby making ourselves God. Okay? Thanking God, or not thanking God, becomes the root of a lot of problems in your life. I made a 60 Seconds of Truth not only 2-3 weeks ago about complaining, okay? Complaining itself is rooted in an unthankful heart. When we complain about our life circumstances more than we do thanking God, what are you showing? You're not thankful to God. And when you're not thankful to God, there are consequences to this. When you don't acknowledge that God has done something for you in your life, make no mistake, there are divine consequences for this. This was shown very, very well in the Old Testament under Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, look at great Babylon that I have built. I've done this. I've done that. Blah 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 blah. When in reality, who's the one that set Nebuchadnezzar in his place? It was God. God institutes leaders. Okay, that's what it says in Romans 13. And because he did not see fit to acknowledge God, because that's what the text says in Daniel 3, Daniel 6, can't remember. He did not see fit to acknowledge God. What happens? God straight up took his will away, gave him the will of a beast as divine judgment. And that's what we're going to get into here. When you ignore God, you, by default, don't give thanks to him, and there are punishments for that. And the punishment here, summarized under the Apostle Paul, is at the end of verse 21, they became futile in their thinking. It's vain, it's worthless, it's depraved. They became futile in their thinking, and their foolish hearts were darkened. That word there is very important. It doesn't seem so in the English, but it's very important to Paul's point about God's judgment on such people. This word is in the passive, okay? It's not so much that they are darkening their own hearts. It's indirectly that their hearts are darkened because of their actions, but they're not darkening their hearts. God is doing that. That's why it's in the passive in Greek instead of the active. It's judgment. God judges people in all sorts of ways. All sorts of ways. And this is one of the ways. And we're going to get into this more when God uses the phrase, or Paul uses the phrase, 3 times here, God gave them up. God has an active role in the judgment of giving people over to their sin. And it starts with the darkening of the mind. Remember, these aren't, good people. Oh God, I want to obey you, but you're not letting me. You're punishing me. No. They're already sinners. They're already rebelling against God. And so God is choosing to judge them. And we can see this course play itself out in a lot of cultures in human history. A lot of them. You look at some of the rise and falls of some of the greatest empires and societies in human history. Right before the end, they go through some pretty wacky stuff. And it's because of texts like this. This is really a blueprint to the downfall of many nations, unfortunately. When we choose to ignore God, not acknowledge Him, there's judgment for that. There's a lot of judgment for that. Claiming to be wise, they became fools. Verse 22. Why would they claim to be wise?
Because they think they know everything without the knowledge of God.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. They think they know everything. There are so many people that reject God on the basis of they know better. Okay? You claim your own wisdom. You determine your own right and wrong. And you become foolish.
Which is the root of the very first sin.
Which is the root of the very first sin. Absolutely. You shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. Okay? Meaning, you get to determine it. But here's the problem. What happens historically, biblically? What happens when human beings get in control of that thing called morality? What happens when we get to determine what is right and what is wrong?
We messed it up.
We mess it up. You get some of the worst examples of human atrocities in history. You get Hitlers, you get Stalins, you get Maos, you get you name it.
You get Cain's.
You get Cain's.
And eventually,
Very basically, yeah.
Eventually you get, what was Cain's great?
Lamech?
Lamech.
Yeah. Yep. Long line of Cains will get you that.
Killed for pleasure.
Yep, he killed for pleasure. Is it right or wrong to kill? It's wrong. Why? Who says? Who says? You say? Your own personal opinion? Because if we're going off of our own personal opinion, our own deciding of what is good and evil, who's to say that you're right? And who's to say that Hitler was wrong? Why is he wrong? I believe it was at the Nuremberg trials that when they were bringing a bunch of the Nazi generals or people before the courts, the Nazis were saying, well, we were just doing what we were told to do by our government. If your government becomes the ultimate standard, hey, we're just doing what we were told, what we were ordered to do. Therefore, it's right. And they said, no, there is a law above our law. What were they referring to? They're referring to God. They're referring to God. God is the one that decides good and evil. And when human beings do it, the pitfall of the first sin, okay? When human beings do it, you get the worst out of human beings. you see what we're really capable of, and it's scary. They make horror movies about it, okay? It's scary what human beings can do, what we're capable of, when we decide good and evil. Claiming to be wise, we became fools. Morons, actually. The Greek word there is moros. It's where we get the word moron from. Yeah, that's Paul's language, calling people a bunch of morons. It's not the insult moron. It's like what Russ was quoting. The fool says in his heart, it's a moral fool. Go ahead, Russ.
I have a thought.
Sure.
You know, there's commentaries for every chapter of the Bible, I believe. And God expounds the poor, and the poor usually comes uneducated.
Mm-hmm.
And yet God expounds them as the people that he really loves. And yet all these commentaries that explain what the Bible really means.
Mm-hmm.
What I would like to ask you today is, can you go to heaven without reading commentaries and having people explain what the Bible really means, or can you go by what the Bible says?
You can go by what the Bible says to get to heaven. Yeah. Yeah. Why? Did you think I wouldn't say that? You trying to trap me or something?
Daniel, maybe.
What's that?
Except maybe Daniel and Revelations.
Oh, yeah, yes. That's
Well, the first century Christians had no commentaries.
that's true. Yep. Oh, actually they did. Oh, that's okay. That's a rabbit hole. Okay. All right. Let's move on. Okay. So, verse 22, claiming to be wise, they became fools and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images, resembling mortal man and birds and animals and creeping things. Right here we get into what is called the depravity of idolatry, the senselessness of idolatry. What is an idol? Somebody explain that to me. What is an idol? Graven image, yep. What else?
Visible representation of God, or thinking that the idol is actually the God.
Mm-hmm. Yep. What else? What's that? Ordinary human being? Yes. He's my idol. Yeah, whenever I hear that, I'm like, oh, you don't know what you're saying, dude. You know, as fun as it is to watch people perform on American Idol, you know, idol's right in the word. American Idol. An idol, as it's said by Adrian Rogers, is anything that you love, fear, or serve more than God. At its very base form, whenever you put something above God in your heart, in your fears, in your mind, in your, the attributes of love, that's an idol. God is to be the top of all of that. Okay? And idolatry, yes?
You are saying what I was going to say.
Oh.
That idols are not necessarily some kind of a form that you carved out that looks like some God that you believe in.
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, there are people that do that in some places, but the majority of people that are idolaters don't do that. People all over the United States, sometimes we find ourselves doing the same thing. We don't even know it.
Yeah.
There's a book, and I forget the name of the author, that says, we become what we worship.
Yes, I think that was Beale.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Yep. That's right. Terry?
And the verse says, covetousness, which is idolatry.
Which is idolatry.
Which is exactly what Ted is talking about here. But let's not forget that idols are not just 2,000 years in the past.
Yes.
There are still millions of people today that are worshiping real, man-made, woman-made, whatever-made
Yes.
idols around the world. And some of them are in the United States.
Hindus have excess of 3 million gods.
Yes. Yep. Okay, so let's do two things here. Let's get into the futility, the senselessness of idolatry first. Let's break it down and see why it is that it's senseless. It does not make sense, okay? And then we're going to get into some modern day examples of idolatry, okay? So, if you would turn over to Isaiah chapter 41. This is the trial of the false gods, the futility of idols. It starts in verse 21. I'll wait for you to get there. Isaiah 41, starting in verse 21. God is the one basically having idols, other gods, on the stand right now. He's questioning them, so to speak. Set forth your case, says the Lord. Bring your proofs, says the King of Jacob. Let them bring them and tell us what is to happen. The first thing about idols and other gods, what you have to realize, okay, is that they can't tell the future. One of the marks of deity, true deity, is the ability to tell the future. He says, let them bring them and tell us what is to happen. Can you tell the future? Can you tell what's going to happen? That's the first thing. Tell us the former things. Tell us what happened in the past when you weren't around. Tell us all that in detail. What they are, that we may consider them, that we may know their outcome, or declare to us the things to come. Tell us what is to come hereafter, that we may know that you are gods. Do good or do harm, that we may be dismayed and terrified. When he says do good or do harm to the idol, remember, what is God addressing? An idol. It's stone, wood, whatever it is. Do good or do bad. Do something. You can't do anything. It's pointless. My mind goes directly when Toy Story came out, okay? When Toy Story came out, it was like 1992. I was not born yet because I was born in 95. I loved Toy Story growing up. So much fun. I love it. And I remember being a kid, being in my room with my toys after watching the movie, and going, move! Do something! I know you can! Do it! And I'd stay there for minutes trying to get them to move, trying to get them to talk, do something. That's really what I have in mind here. It's pointless because they're not alive. They're not real. So God is saying, do good or do bad or do something at all. Can you tell the future? Can you tell the past? Can you tell why the things happened in the past? Nope. I guess you're pretty pointless. This is really the thrust of the pointless endeavor of idolatry. Your idols can't do anything for you. Only the God who spoke everything into existence can do something for you. Okay? So, that's the futility of idolatry. Now I want to get into some modern day examples of idolatry because, as somebody said over here, it's very much around today. It's not so much anymore that we're setting up idols and worshiping them, although that is also on the rise. In 2016, I believe it was, they set up the statue of Baphomet in Detroit. Okay, did you know about that? Yeah, that happened, which is a satanic figure, by the way. And they have kids in the statue looking up to him and everything. But that, of course, is an obvious example of idolatry. But idolatry goes much deeper into the heart of the human being. It's what you worship in your service every single day. You can see this easily with, and I'm not knocking football. Football's a very neutral thing. Enjoy it. Have fun. But there are some people that, man, it's like a religious service. They will dress up, paint their face. They can go ahead and cite every single statistic in sports, but they know little to nothing about God. That's idolatry. That is worshiping another God, the God of football. And that can be applied to anything. And more so today than it has been before, we are venturing into a scarier kind of idolatry, and it's very, very dystopian in some forms. I wanted to read something from the book. Well, first of all, this is spoken during 2018 during the World Economic Forum by Yuval Noah Harari. He said, science is replacing evolution by natural selection with evolution by intelligent design. Not the intelligent design of some god above the clouds, but our intelligent design and the intelligent design of our clouds. This is spoken in front of the world leaders, businessmen, politicians, investors, you name it. Some of the biggest names in the world go to these things, and that was spoken there. That's clearly idolatry. But I also make time to talk about a different kind of idolatry that is now finding its way into our society. And it sounds dystopian, it sounds futuristic, but here's the future, folks, okay? More and more, there are experiments that are done with AI, okay? Artificial intelligence. And the benefit of AI is it can be very, very good. It can help us out in our daily tasks just as much as a dishwasher or a microwave does. These are all very neutral things. But when it comes to artificial intelligence, you have to remember, who are the people programming artificial intelligence? They're going to be they have them in robots as well now. Pretty soon, in the next 10, 20 years, you might even have a household robot to do your own, chores. That's like a very real, it sounds science fiction, doesn't it? But look around at your life today and everything that you have with your iPods and your touchscreens and the laptops and everything that you have. They're working on holograms right now. Everything that we thought was science fiction 50 years ago, yeah, it's here. Okay, outside of the floating car, which I'm still waiting for. But when it comes to idolatry with technology, it's a possibility and it's happening. And it will be a real threat if, say, you get a bunch of evolutionists who designed an AI to have the thinking patterns to view religion as what? As bad. It's not good it's not for the best of humanity. It hinders us. Okay? What kind of culture, what kind of world does that set up? Idolatry has always been around. We want to be gods in one way or another. Either we make ourselves God or we make little gods for us. And it's the same way today. This is in Joseph Booth's book, The Mission from God, of God. He says, what was previously considered magic and mysticism and ancient paganism will now be pursued by technological means. It's true. It's true. Everything that human beings have sought to do for so long in ancient pagan religions, live forever, heal automatically, have powers, whatever it is, this stuff is being sought by the world elite of today. And it's one massive Tower of Babel, technological Tower of Babel. Instead of with wood and stone, it's going to be with circuit boards, metal. Idolatry is always around. As long as human beings reject God, it's always going to be around in one way, shape, form, or another. Let's, good, I got 1 minute. Let me just get to something really quick, okay? Going back to Romans 1, I know there was a lot of stuff there. Verse 24, therefore God gave them up in the lust of their hearts to impurity, to the dishonoring of their bodies amongst themselves. What does that mean, Paul? Because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, worship and serve the creature rather than the Creator, who's blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, verse 26, God gave them up to dishonorable passions. What are the dishonorable passions? For their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature. And the men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another, men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error. It was in 2019 that Dr. Pavi Rosanen, she was sued, basically, for hate speech. For simply, no commentary of her own, she tweeted out Romans 1, 26 and 27, and that's all she did. She just tweeted out those verses. Her crime? Well, that happened to be during a pride celebration in Sweden. Okay? You're going to share something like that during Pride? Well, that caused a big uproar. Thankfully, as of March earlier this year, the charges were released. But the fact that that would even be entertained should give us some sort of indication as to where the culture of the world is going. They're rejecting more and more of the God of the Bible, and the God who says marriage is between a man and a woman, and anything outside of that is what? An abomination. It's a dishonorable passion. Pretty soon, there's going to be a documentary coming out called 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted the World, or the Culture, or something like that. And in this documentary, what they're trying to prove is that the word for homosexuality, arsenokoitai, is mistranslated, and they prove that by going back to the RSV Translation Committee, the Revised Standard Version. It was in the 40s when they made the RSV, and all of the Greek scholars that were there saw the word arsenokoitai, and they said this should be translated as homosexual, sodomite, things like that. But there was one Greek scholar, student, who was much younger than all of them, that said, no, that shouldn't be the case. And so they're making a big old documentary about that right now, trying to prove that, see, it's a mistranslation, homosexuality shouldn't be in the Bible. Well, it kind of destroys their argument. When you read verses 26 and 27, the Greek word arsenokoitai, homosexual, does not appear here at all. And yet we can clearly see what it is talking about. It is talking about homosexuality. You don't even need the Greek word for that. As uncomfortable as that is, as much as our culture hates that, that's the truth. And this comes from God giving them over to a debased mind. Okay, we're going to have to end it there. Thank you all for the comments, questions. Thank you for listening. Hope it was informative to you all, and see you later.